Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our distinguished guest, Herbert Mensah, President of Rugby Africa. Our discussion will be moderated by Yvonne Ndej, former BBC and Al Jazeera TV correspondent and journalist, regional spokesperson, IARM, UN Migration.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Have a seat, Mr. Mensah. Good morning. Welcome to this fireside chat on sport as a business catalyst here at the Africa Investment Forum. Sport is one of the fastest growing industries on the continent. It has the tremendous potential to promote economic and social development. According to Price Waterhouse, the sports industry was valued at over $7 billion in 2018 and is projected to reach over $12 billion by 2027. Investment in sport in Africa is, however, lagging seriously behind, with just 1% of financing for African startups going to sports-related companies. I'm excited today to talk about sport at the Africa Investment Forum and the role of sport in driving economic change and development. We will explore opportunities for investment and discuss ways to promote economic development through sport and leverage sport as a tool for change. It gives me great pleasure, immense pleasure, to be talking today to you, Herbert Mensah, the President of Rugby Africa. I'm going to take a seat, and I hope everyone enjoys this conversation. So, Herbert,
yes.
Allow me to start with asking you a simple question. Why is the President of Rugby Africa here at the Africa Investment Forum?
I think that's a very good question, actually. When I received the invitation, I had people asking me, are you sure this is the right forum? And I said, which other forum would you rather come to? Sport, after all, is big business. I come from a background and pedigree of business, and therefore, what better way to talk about probably the most important component in the development of African, I was going to say manhood, but we're talking about women and gender and everybody else, than sport. We are a continent of 1.4 billion people. By 2050, I believe we'll be 35 to 40% of global population. I already know that we're the smartest. And therefore it is, how do we bridge ourselves? How do we convince those who control capital to understand that their future is not in managing the current, but in projecting for the future, which is sports?
Awesome. And when you come to a forum like this, what type of investment are we talking about? When we talk about investment in sport, what does that mean?
You know, it means so many things. I think perhaps I need to roll the clock back a little bit and talk about how globally, proudly African that I am, first and foremost. Getting on in age at 63, having traversed the world and been involved in major business ventures, I can't help always but look and say that we are the chosen ones. We come from a continent that was blessed with everything that nobody else has. We really are. I grew up, and as a kid in school in Ghana, they would say, what do you have? And people would raise their hands and say, we have gold, we have cocoa, we have timber, we have whatever else. And then they'll feel very happy and they'll sit down. And I guess that narrative has continued over the years. The question is, and has been for me as I've traversed the world, is, do you have the gold refineries? Do you have the oil refineries? Do you have the chocolate factories? What do you have? if you have all the greatness and the greatness is taken away from the continent and then it's re-imported, surely that does not say as much as it should do for us in terms of development and growth. Then from a sports perspective, I have grown up as a sportsman in a previous life when I was a lot younger. But I have seen a situation whereby the greatest athletes of the world, in my view, are either African or of African descent. And it's no small reason that I sit here today sporting a beautifully green tie, depicting the fact that we are the champions of the world, and that is the Springboks. And not only have we repeated it to become champions of the world in France, but every aspect of what it is that we say are the Springboks. The captain in Siya Kolisi, maybe the greatest sporting captain around today in terms of leadership and humility. It says something particularly special. So I come here sitting representing our continent very much as champions. When we look at the input of what is required, that I sit as the president of Rugby Africa with a budget of $2.25 million a year for 39 countries. And yet it is that we can compete at one end to become world champions. And that the money in my sport is centered around that of the Six Nations, of which we don't begrudge them. We're not here to moan and to complain. But the fact is that many of them receive over $100 million a year individually as countries, as opposed to 2.2 million. I've come from France, where my meetings with Florian Grill, the chairman, president of the French Rugby Federation, FFR, and he says to me there are 1,200 Africans playing rugby in France today. I met with the extraordinary Benazi, Moroccan, one of the great loose forwards of recent times, who is also Moroccan. Mario Itoje is English. Fikou is from La Côte d'Ivoire. The point I'm trying to make is that the greatest athletes for me, who give us the greatest enjoyment, happen to be of African descent. Even as I speak with the bright lights, I can see some smiles illuminated on people's faces as I go down this trajectory of greatness. And as I went into Paris, actually, I said to my good friend Nicholas, he said, what do you really want to see when you go into Paris? Because we've been there forever. And I said I wanted to meet one particular gentleman, and it was somebody who was a UFC fighter, Cyril Gane. And we went to his gym, and the humility of the man, the eloquence of the man, and the time he had spending with kids and women and the rest reinforced exactly the same. I'm proudly African, you know. And I look at this business and the business of sport, and I say sometimes we need to readdress ourselves. I had an extraordinary meeting with AFD, which is Agence France Development. You can tell I don't speak French. And we got them to invest some money into gender and to kids for the development of a period. So it struck me, if I'm coming to Morocco, surely this most auspicious of occasions with a pool of massively intelligent people who sit on the button of massive levels of capital and finance, surely this is a time to appeal and say, when you're looking at how to make money and you take a medium-term look at it, surely you need to invest in excellence. Do you have the product, the athletes? Yes. Are they the best? Yes. Is it what the global market is interested in? Yes. Surely this must be the way that we look at ourselves. Maybe it is, as I look at the brochures and I read the models that say, do you qualify for funding? Maybe they're not geared to us here in Africa. Maybe we need to start looking at ourselves and saying, what is it that we as Africans can do for Africa?
Yep.
How can we look at our own models? When I go through all the wonderful people who have sponsored the event, the major development agencies, and I go and say, where within that If AFD can do it from France for Africa, what is it that we can do ourselves? Maybe it is our models are not right. How can we cater for 1.4 billion people? Because I'm here as representing the champions of the world, but we're in this great country, Morocco. It's just a little while ago I saw them reach the semi-final of the World Cup.
Absolutely.
Who did not see the exploits of Hakimi and know that that is one of the greatest in the world? Who did not understand that they had a local coach in Walid, forgive my familiarity in calling him by his first name. And I do that because he used to coach a team called Wydad. And when I was chairman, president of Kumasi Asante Kotoko, one of the greatest teams in Africa, we met them in the Africa Cup final, Wydad. So there is a history, and everybody understands football. But we come from this wonderful sport called rugby where you can be 2 meters 10, or you can be 1 meter 70. You can be slightly overweight like me at 122, 125 kilos, or you can be 70 kilos. Antonio played for France at 150, 160 kilos. It provides something that other sports do not. Then the principles upon which we operate of respect, solidarity, teamwork, etc. Surely they are components that we need to invest in the kids, in the young people. I was here a few months ago and I met the Minister of Sports here, an extraordinary gentleman. And his philosophy here in Morocco was to invest in the youth, grassroots programs, because the kids are our future. In 2040, 2050, we'll be 40% of the global population will be based here in Africa. And it just says, if the world is moving this way, business cannot be stuck in this route. And I hope that when I come through here, I can get those whose fingers and pulses are on capital, on lending arms, etc., to revisit the policies. As I say, if it is AFD, Ken, working with the French Rugby Federation, and now with Rugby Africa, provide money for the youth and for gender, why can't ours? Why can't our sponsors revisit the way in which that they apply money to the continent of which they represent and say, actually, we're going to go in a new way forward?
Allow me to interject there, and you beat me to it, Mr. Mensah, in referring to this tremendous victory that we've all just witnessed in Paris with an African nation, South Africa, becoming world champions, and of course, as you mentioned, the stunning advancement of Morocco in the recent World Cup, which was fantastic. So much excitement. We see so much excitement. And my question is, how do we translate that excitement into the investment we need to see? And how does this investment in rugby in particular, and in sport in Africa in general, advance economic development? What are the tangible advancements that we can see when we put money into rugby or sport on the continent?
I think that is a critical question. And I think if you take first the understanding, the concept that sport is big business, then you have to come into the fact that we're looking for mindset change. I've been in seat for 8 months as the first Anglophone president of Rugby Africa. I'm not sure for how long, but certainly the first. And I say that because we're looking for a fundamental mindset change. Internally, within us, as president of Rugby Africa and my team, and I speak for all the sports in that regard. And then an understanding that if this is the case, we've just come from France, an extraordinary World Cup. And I have to congratulate Julien Colette and his team for putting that together. I hear the revenue intake from that alone is about 2.4 billion euros. Sport is, in fact, extremely big business. I think if we can get people to stop thinking about it as young kids going to kick a football in the park and understand that the owners of everything, whether it is the Orioles or the Jets or the Cowboys, are all billionaires. Sport is something that, at the end of the day, provides entertainment, but it also provides an educational base for the kids for the future. With so many people and with the talent we have, unlike other continents, I think the critical issue when we talk about the two is first the realization. Secondly, is to turn around to those who control capital to say, don't look at it as a side thing, or that's what my kids do, but it could be a business. If you take an investment and say, we need to have a marriage between government, capital, labor, which may seem like common sense to all of you sitting here, but it is a truism. If you could actually mate those, and at the end of the day, the people sitting on the money understand that, A, you're obligated to your shareholders to be able to qualify and say, we have invested in this business over the last X period, and therefore you see money's coming in. Then at the end of the day, there's a CSR obligation. Then there's a sense of the fact that you're on the continent which you're proudly a part of. There are reasons enough, if the structures are changed, and those on the development side look at the way that they lend money. As I walked in, I'm hugely impressed.
Yeah.
I needed to start off by congratulating the organizers of this event.
Yes.
Extraordinary, and I say congratulations. Also the concept itself,
Yeah.
where the first name you see as I raise my head is Africa. That is, again, is something that is truly extraordinary. But I think that when you then look and see what is happening, the whole world is being forced. We have the World Junior Olympics in Senegal.
Yeah.
We have something of the cycling orientation in Rwanda. People are realizing that they have to start staging global events here in Africa. A, because there's the market for those who can see a bit further, and B, you have possible success stories that come here. If we can change the basis upon which we look inwardly at ourselves, mindset change. If we understand that we're not compromising the ability to make money,
Yeah.
because if, for example, one of the things when I came into office 8 months ago was there should be a rugby stadium built in every single country in Africa, every single rugby playing nation. They play on the beach, they play on the street, they play in townships, and they become world champions. So just imagine if that was there. Is the funding there from government, or are development partners going to change the way that they look at themselves and say, we will support this because we know down the line there will be competitions, there will be opportunities, and we will feel good as well at the end of the day about doing it. We will be taking the children and investing as the way forward. Change those models. Take that full sense of self-belief and respect that we are Africans, and therefore Africans for Africans. Then I think Yvonne will get about the change that we need.
Awesome. Bearing in mind, Mr. Mensah, that this is an investment forum, and we are talking, we hope, to investors, and people are listening to this conversation. Sometimes it feels that there are these barriers, or people don't know what to do, or institutions don't have an investment in sport plan or strategy. We hear, as you said, the numbers, the billions that are turned over in other continents, the amount of money that goes in to rugby and other sports in other regions of this world. How do you actually make the investment, and who needs to make the investment?
I think it's a collective one. I think I smile because, you know, the wonderful thing about money is that money's friend is money. You know, I tell the people that work with me that life is often about timing, opportunities, and angles. Such a broad thing to say. Timing, surely this is the time. There would have been a time to say, why invest? You can never be good enough. Guess what? We are the world champions.
Yeah.
We are. There are, as I've been told, other world champions. There are not many team world champions. And the South Africans, the Springboks for Africa, are the world champions. So I think timing is there. Opportunity, because now you will be ahead of the game. Don't wait for others on other continents to come and make the investments that you are then forced to take a little bit of, or to restructure their financing of. Become the investors. Take ownership of what it's about. Look, We're all global citizens, so we've seen what is happening now with Live Golf, that the Saudis have taken over golf. We've seen what's happening with football. We've seen what's happening with other sports. Our interest is that if it is that the investments are made, it'll turn over economies. Monies will be spent, and depending on how you look at money, it takes, and I always believe that the smallest man to spend that extra dime, and if enough of them are spending that money, the economy turns over. And the economy of Africa, 1.4 billion of them, turns over. So I really would hope that it's looked first and foremost as a business. And therefore, what does a business bring to you? It brings about investment today for reward tomorrow. We're not talking about something new. Go to the Americas, go to Europe, go to Asia, whether it's cricket in India or whatever else may be, and they've set up new competition structures, and the IPL is bringing in billions. Africa has also got to do the same. And I can't think of a better sport than in terms of rugby. And then there are things that obviously cross all lines, because the training fields, the parks, the nutrition centers are something which, if invested in, will help not just one sport, but many other sports. If I may just say, because I thank you for the time you're giving me, Yvonne. My father, who's no longer around, is an old businessman. He was not lucky enough to have gone to school and been educated. But by the time he died, he was the biggest industrialist in my country of Ghana, that owned farms, cigarette factories, textile factories, exported products from Ghana to European markets and the rest. And he used to always say to me that, Herbert, you need to be the first and you need to be different. And I say to the people here today, be the first and be different. Because everybody lends and does something in a particular way doesn't mean you should do it. Understand the opportunity that is there. Forget about what I'm saying and look at 1.4 billion people. Forget about what I'm saying and look at the world champions that we are. Forget about what I'm saying and say that you're in this extraordinary country of Morocco. I must get invited here more. And go back to the last World Cup where they were not meant to do so well. And they did. And they did. And they reached the semifinal. And I say, congratulations to Morocco. But also to those who followed closely after, Senegal, Cameroon, even my own country of Ghana, etc. So we are world champions. We're coming to the Olympics, and I'm sure you will see Kenyans and Ugandans and Somalis and the rest conquering the whole world on small budgets. The future of sports surely is Africa. And the future is for the brave. But the brave are the ones who take the decisions today. We need to change the models, change the criteria, understand that money at the end of the day is what we will make. Our shareholders will be happy. But rather than making it for somebody else, gold, no gold refineries, oil, not enough oil refineries, cocoa, but no chocolate factories. We've got the best athletes. Let's not wait for somebody else to take over and do it, and then we are now working for them.
Fantastic, Herbert. You've laid out the case, the business case, which is what the investor needs to hear. But of course, this cannot be acted upon in isolation. There are other partners involved in making things happen, in creating the enabling environment to make things happen. What are your expectations for us to realize this investment we're talking about of governments, of development agencies and partners, of governing bodies? I mean, we see the stories, we hear the stories often in the news when there are sporting events about mismanagement, corruption, players not being paid, et cetera, really kind of depressing headlines. And when we see the Springboks making it and others, it really is, what is the phrase that they use? Not because of them, but because these athletes have worked so hard. So what is your expectation of those other stakeholders that I mentioned?
Yvonne, that is such a deep and such a powerful, pertinent question. It is. We're not dreamers. I think we do understand, and I think that is the power of the question that you asked. And I think that you can take two or three different visuals of the same. We can say that Rome was not built in a day, and you can't eat something that is so massive with one bite. You've got to take bite-sized bits in order to achieve where you want. Look, the beautiful thing of where we are is two or threefold. I was in France, and I wage war the way that I do with my governing body. I looked and said, if you believe in gender, which I do, I'm massive on gender. And somebody will say, okay. And I say, you need to meet my mum. If you understand who my mum is, then you'll understand my respect for womanhood is something that, you know, I may be a big fella, but she'll deal with me in 1 second.
Yeah.
So you can't say that you're massive on gender and then you allocate me £150,000 a year for 39 countries to buy air tickets, to run competitions. Then there's something wrong there.
Yeah.
So those are wars that we take over. Grassroots-related programs, and the kids, I take them on that. The whole issue of providing more competition that we do. Did I have some success? Yes, I did. Did I have enough? No, I didn't. So that's one battle to be continued. Then we come into governments, and I'm pleased to say that there have been 5, 6, 7 countries whose ministers of sport or Office of the Presidencies have responded directly to my clarion call of get involved, help your own, and help the sport. Morocco is one of them, and I have to take my hat off directly to them. As I was coming in, I got a call from Uganda. That's another one who's prepared to co-host events and look to see how it is they can invest in their youth and where they're going. So we have a number of countries who have actually responded. Is it enough? No, it's not. But it's coming from zero to where we are. And for 2024, I would love a situation where the development partners that we have here today have a look and then say, can we talk? Then we say, we would like to have a look at this and X, Y, and Z. We are then in a position to approach 4 or 5 particular countries. So we're now working together. And the working together then says those governments who need to enable, who are the legislators and need to bring down some of the barriers to entry, are in a position to now work to bring about greater investment into where we're going. If there's a will, there's a way. And for me, from where I'm standing, open door policy. And I reach out and I say, not only to myself, but that I've got other equivalents in other sports, to also let's raise our head and be proudly African. Have that sense of internal belief and say, we need to now work with our governments because everybody's got some level of strength. We need to look and also point out what is happening globally, because I made the point about Agence Française Développement. If that's what they're doing, then we should be in a position within the development agencies who are here today to say, let's have a look internally at where we're going. Maybe we didn't have the confidence. Maybe we were not sure about the leadership within sports in Africa. Maybe we looked at governments themselves and we're not sure whether the timing was right. And I say the timing is right. This could not be a better time. I think if we can bring those together in that capacity, then it is that this whole juggernaut will start moving. Africa will be the winner. The lenders will be the winners. Capital and business will be the winners. And our kids today and tomorrow will be the winners.
I'm glad you mentioned kids because my next question and point was about the changing demographics of the world and of the African continent. And we read and we hear that at some point in the not too distant future, Africans will make up 1/3 of global population, or if not more. Why do investors need to tap into and be aware of this opportunity that is unfolding in front of us? And what is the connection to that investment in sport? What is the connection between the youth population growing and the need to capitalize on this youth population growing and bring in sport?
I think that's it's critical, Yvonne, because even if I look at what is going on through sports, I arrived in this beautiful country late last night, and you turn on the news channels first to see if the world is still one or whether it's 3 or 4 or disintegrated. Then you take a deep breath and you say, we're all still alive. Yeah. Then I love all sports, so I start flipping the channels. I wasn't too successful. I was looking to see if Manchester United won or lost, and I'm not a Manchester United fan, by the way. But the reason why I bring it up is that the person who scored the winning goal in the 94th or 96th minute for Copenhagen was 17 years old. Was 17 years old. If I look and see what has happened in the world of rugby in the last 3 cycles that France have won the world under 20 competitions, with young men who at 130 kilos cannot say they're under 20 years old, but they are giants in their time. The future, Yvonne, is the youth, are the young people. If we understand that in terms of the dynamics of the ability, and if you take it that sports is maybe the fastest growing business there is, sports, I haven't even touched on sports nutrition, because I'm very big on that sort of thing, that we have so much in terms of our natural products, which are far superior to what is now being produced in the West. And when I run sporting organizations in parts of Africa, I try to talk to them about the fact that you can get your simple carbs from here, your complex carbs from here. You don't need to eat pasta before you go and play a match. Our grandparents were eating heavy-duty starch before they went farming 5 kilometers in the bush to come back. The antioxidants from some of our products are much higher than you'll get from kale and broccoli. It's a whole industry. And the statistics that I looked at in terms of sports nutrition, in terms of tablets, in terms of whatever else, then you wonder, we have cola, ground cola with parts of cayenne and other forms provide an extraordinary stimulant, natural stimulant, to help you in sports. People don't realize that you eat watermelon after a heavy meal. It helps as a natural diuretic in terms of modulating your body weight and the rest, that pawpaw is a natural healer and the leaves from this can do that. This is all sports linked. Just imagine if we're investing in that. Why does that market have to come from America when the products are here? So you start looking at what it is that Africa has got to offer. The athletes, the nutrition, the medicinal side, you name it. It becomes the future. And if you know that in the next 20 years, this is where you are, and you've invested today, you will control not only Africa's 1.4 billion, but you will now be taking markets in China and in America and the rest. Money knows no color, and therefore it's be going to where it'll have the greatest gains from where it's invested in. And that's why I say that we really need to look. Don't look at the guy running 60 meters, 100 meters. But understand that as you walk out today, or the lunch you'll have today, there will be some herbs and spices that you can only get here. And that applies to the whole of Africa. So be brave, invest now, make the money for tomorrow, and let's have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful continent.
Fantastic, Mr. Mensah. You recently made a very bold statement in an appearance on British television, the BBC, about African athletes being the world's best. What prompted that statement?
Well, I think you need to sometimes, I think when I was young, when you had an injury, they'd say, rub salt into the wound a little bit, you know. I was once in a previous life involved in DSTV. I knew the owner, and I thought as part of the change, I helped to propagate the product. And I remember that senior executives telling me that, you know, when you're good or when you make it, you need to let people know that you are. You know, don't let the haters pretend it's somebody else. You know? And so, for me, it was a natural to be able to get out there and talk, because I spent the early part of the year watching Toby Amuson with the 110-meter hurdles for ladies athletes do so well, and I was hugely impressed. And then I watched others with long jump and high jump, and then I watched the athletes with rugby doing so well. So it's great to see the success of France, of Great Britain, of other countries, but it's also impossible not to look and say, "Ooh, I know him."
50% of them are Africans.
Yeah, from Africa, absolutely. Whether it's the French national football team, or the rugby team, or the English rugby team, or the Australians and New Zealanders with people from the islands playing. The world has become global, and it's not for me here to say whether it's right or wrong. That's not where I come from. You probably gather, I love all sports, so I do watch. But what I'm saying is, why not harness them here where you have real talent? Because sometimes when we move around in Africa, I'm driving, and I'm astounded when I see somebody walking somewhere who's 6'8", and it's just natural for him.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, gosh, the NBA will be looking for him, or rugby people will be looking for him. And then the tribe that I come from, people have rudely asked whether it is my father was my father, because we're kind of short, you know. But then it is that I know that they are the best footballers, you know, and that Kotoko has defeated the El Alis and the rest of this world, and we got footballers who are 5'6" but can turn on a dime and create problems. And I was watching Manchester City and Francis Doku from Belgium. No, actually, he's from Ghana. Okay, creating magic. Africa is full of magicians. You know, we talk about musicians, we talk about artists, we talk about people creating magic, entertainment, making happiness with nothing, absolutely nothing. So sometimes you need to point out to them, you love him, he's actually African.
Yeah.
I've got 1 billion more on the continent of Africa who can do even better.
Yeah.
Just give them a chance.
Yeah. Awesome. Oof, final question, because we are running out of time, unfortunately. As we discussed earlier, we are in the presence of, and the audience is about investment. What words would you choose? What words would you convey and communicate to investors in 30 seconds about why investment in rugby and sport on the continent is so fundamental, so crucial to the economic and therefore social development of the African continent?
I think simply we are in an extraordinary environment of people who are determining the future of 1.4 billion people. And I recognize that it is your business to make money, to invest money and to make money for the development of our extraordinary continent. Sport is the way to go. It's not about giving money away. It's about investing in a new future, which has always been there, which at the end of the day will ensure that you make your returns. It will create stability for us and for growth and ensure success for everybody. Africa surely is the greatest place on earth, Yvonne. And it's not because there's a Mauritius or a Seychelles. It's not because of the beauty of where we sit and stand right now. You can go from north to south to east to west and have that experience that you will not experience anywhere else. And at the end of the day, make money and do good. That's why they should invest in us.
Herbert, thank you so much for this conversation. How can people reach you? How can people get involved?
I will leave details with you, Yvonne, and I really hope that we can take up the discussion to another point. As you can probably hear, I'm a doer, not a talker. So I will leave the details, the contact details, that maybe we can take that discussion further. If you're from the development world, let's do better than AFD. If you really love Africa, put your money knowing where it is that you'll get it back out at the end of the day. What you haven't thought of, maybe we have. Come, let's work together and make this continent the greatest continent on earth.
Thank you so much for those final inspiring words. I'm thrilled to let everybody in the audience know that Herbert Mensah is not rushing off for a flight today. He's around, and hopefully, if you're interested to know more, which I think everybody is, and how to actually do something, Mr. Mensah is still around. Please join me in giving him a round of applause for this discussion, and thank you so much for this very inspiring time and fireside chat.
Absolutely.
Enjoy the rest of the day, our audience. Thank you very much.